Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. They start to wonder what the golden light is, asking if it's even a pure-blooded awakening anymore. But since there was also red, it means that it must be. Zeke says of course they'll have doubts, but it'll work against him if he says something here. The spectators start to say that the mana lamps are fine, so maybe the sword statue is broken. As there was no mana inhibition, it can't be a pure-blooded awakening. Abel then starts to clap, asking why they are all so serious, as they have gotten 2 pure-blooded awakenings in one batch, and that this is something to celebrate. They all look fearful and immediately say that's right, and start clapping along with him, saying that it's such a blessing. Abel shouts, asking Panmark what he's doing, telling him to get a glove for the newest member. Panmark says yes sir, and as soon as they give it to Zeke, he says that they're actually quite heavy. As he walks away, Abel watches him and smiles. Zeke says his intentions are obvious, but taking his help is something he doesn't want to do. Now the whole situation feels like shit. Panmark says that this is now the end of the blessing rite, so they'll have a celebratory party. Everybody here is invited in to enjoy it. Zeke walks off, saying that he's just going to go find the training room. Abel calls out to him, which surprises him. He slowly turns around, saying he didn't expect him to be here, as Abel asks him where he's going before the party even starts. Abel then congratulates him on a pure-blooded awakening, sticking his hand out. Zeke laughs awkwardly, wondering why he wants a handshake, but he can't refuse it, because if he does, then his hostility towards him will be shown. He decides to play along for now. As he sticks his hand out, he gets a flashback of some kind of massacre and stops himself. Abel wonders what this means, as Zeke puts his hand back to his side. Abel, speechless for a second, then says that this is awkward while laughing. Zeke says even if it's for the sake of saving face, he can't shake hands with a scumbag like this. Abel tells him that it can't be helped, and that he'll have to settle for having seen his face, patting his shoulder, telling him he'll see him again. As Abel walks off, Zeke says that he definitely will see him again, and we see that he's really pissed about it. At the party, everybody's talking about the 2 new purebloods, and that Zeke's golden light was quite shocking, and that this is the first time this has happened. So they all thought it was a failed awakening at first, wondering where Zeke is. Zeke takes off his clothes and sighs, saying that he thought he was going to suffocate in there. That aside, he wonders how he's completely fine in this situation, as all pure blood awakenings have the ability of mana inhibition, which we talked about before. The ability that proves you're in the opposition to the dragons, the source of mana. However, because most machines use mana as their fuel, a pure blood requires the use of the house's gloves. If he was a pure blood, then there should have been problems the moment he took the gloves off. He opens his status window to look at it, as we see his classes in there, and he also has 100 karma points. He says that something has changed, as one of the skills is mana reflection rather than mana inhibition. He decides to sit down and read it properly, as the skill creates a distortion field to nullify nearby mana. He says that this must mean the lamps were okay because it is not a passive skill, and that he was a rare healer before the rite, but now he is a unique immortal. He starts to think about it, saying all the graduates had regular awakenings with blue aura, and as only Raina had a pure-blooded awakening to begin with, and his was red off rip that turned into gold. The system said that it lost critical information by the classification terminal, wondering if it meant the bronze statue. As soon as the system put in the information, the statue which stopped moving immediately started to emit red light. He sighs, saying that this is to give him a headache, as he now realizes what happened. The bronze statue doesn't determine whether you have awakened or not, it determines the user's class. Red for a rare class and gold for a unique. The bronze statue is an ancient relic used even before the time of Terrakin, the founder of the Drakers. The concept of class doesn't exist nowadays, so it was only used to check if one had awakened or not, and they have mislabeled the red light, shown as a sign of a rare class, to that of a pure-blooded awakening. He sighs, saying he can't believe the family heads have never realized this, but then he remembers he has karma points, wondering if it was a gift from the ritual. He decides to use it, buying the Draconian skill shop. As it takes 10 points away, he now can view all of the Draconian skills and choose which one to buy. We see there are some called Dragon Eyes, Might of the Dragon, also Devour, which all do dragon-like things. Dragon Eyes allows the user to view detailed information of an individual, Might of the Dragon makes those around him surrender to aura, and Devour just lets him be a pig. He says he's going to get Dragon Eyes and Might of the Dragon, but he wonders why Devour costs so many points. He says he better get something that's obviously good rather than take a shot in the dark, so he gets both of those said skills. He says Might of the Dragon is probably too dangerous to use here, so instead he uses dragon eyes, as we see his eyes turn into that of a dragon, releasing a golden aura. He looks around, saying he expected more as it said there was detailed information, but nothing's changed. As soon as he opens his window, he starts to laugh, saying this doesn't even make sense as the statue in the center of the garden looks like it's right in front of him. Even though it's so far away, he says this could be really useful. A status window then appears, which surprises him as it asks if he wants detailed information about the object. He wonders what it means, so he clicks yes, only for even more status windows to start to appear, telling him every single thing in the room and how it was made. His head starts to hurt, and he immediately begins to lose his balance, catching himself in the chair. If all draconian skills are like this, he won't even be able to use them for long. His class skill activates, which is healing factor and vigor recovery. As he immediately feels refreshed, he says he didn't even intend to use his healing skill. He checks his skills, saying to wait, all of his class skills have been changed into passive abilities, and their levels are increased by 1. The healing factor means that he automatically repairs himself, and he says that this shit is actually low-key broken. Healing may seem like it's already overpowered, but it's not something he can constantly spam and the effects are limited. However, healing factor is infinite. He grabs a knife off the table, saying he needs to test this, and he holds out his arm and begins playing guitar on his wrist. Healing factor activates, as we see there's not even a scar left behind. He says that since the academy takes 5 years to finish, that might be too long, so he'll just do it in 2 instead. We learn that the Draker Academy is the greatest knight academy on the continent, one that any aspiring knight would give an arm or a leg to enroll in. It is located in the Duchy of Troy. Every new semester, there are thousands of new students. We see them laughing in the courtyard. Zeke says that the high-ranked students are no different from adults, and they are all trained to perfection. However, if he compares them to those from the cradle, then maybe they are slightly worse. While there are still children from the great families, it seems they have already established their territory. It seems as if his family is rotten to the core. Among the countless branch families supporting the transcendent Draker family, the 3 families with the most influence are called the Great Families. There is Raina's family, the Turin family. There is Owen's family, the Zimmons, and of course, Jackin's family. Even the children of those 3 families are in such a state where people are following them around. He starts to laugh, saying that it's none of his business, as he walks away. He heads to the high-class dormitory, specifically the Platinum Mansion. He says it sure is nice to be a purebred. The Platinum Mansion is a dormitory furnished with a training hall, a library, and various kinds of facilities. It is only open to the highest-ranked students, and even those from the cradle cannot enter it so easily. As for pure-blooded awakeners, they are given the special privilege of a floor master, an entire floor known as the Platinum Floor. One of the maids welcomes Zeke on his entrance, saying they'll escort him to his assigned floor. As we see, there is actually a whole staff of maids and butlers. Zeke sighs, saying that this is a bit too much, even if he is pure-blooded. One of the butlers tells him that Decker is waiting for him in his room. Zeke asks what he wants, and Decker says that he's come to deliver something. Zeke notices a box on the table and immediately puts them on, saying it is different from the other tempering gloves that he had before, and Decker says it's a relief he likes them. Zeke says that since he's got new gloves, he would like to get a new sword too, asking Decker what he thinks. Decker tells him that is an excellent decision, and because the Duchy of Troy is close to the Giant's Mountain, it is abundant with good quality iron and excellent craftsmen. It's to the point where people say that the first weapon of the Academy alumni is always a Trojan. Decker says that he's going to go search for a decent craftsman, but Zeke says that's fine, as he has one in mind, and he'll go in person to set up an appointment, as he hands him a note. Decker reads the name out, which is Galleon Halbert, and he says he's never heard of this, but he'll do as he's ordered. He also reminds him that classes are going to start tomorrow, so he needs to review the documents he laid out for him. Zeke says he's always nagging, but he gets it. Some time later, we see him reading the documents sitting down, and he says that given how the Platinum Floor is completely isolated, he'll have a lot more freedom to develop his draconian skills. Then there's a knock on the door, and he tells them to enter, and a woman apologizes and tells him that Floor Master Raina has sent a dinner invitation. Zeke's a little surprised by this, telling her to take him there, and as he heads to the roof, he spots something that he ironically says is cute, asking if they are some kind of southern cartel. With a bunch of dudes surrounding Raina, she welcomes Zeke. She says that her family's people are rather peculiar, and she apologizes and sends them away. He sits down, thanking her for her concern, and she says that she wants to discuss business after the meal. Zeke says that she's finally living up to the name of Lightning Knight, because she's utilizing her lower abdomen to control her aura, wondering if she's already laid her eyes on the position of Purple Knight. But he wonders why her swordsmanship is stuck in a rut, and he sighs, saying that it's a waste of her potential. Some time later, after he's eaten about 4 plates, he laughs nervously, saying that he's a pretty big eater, but this is far beyond his expectations. As Raina has doubled what he ate, she says that since they're done, she'll get straight to business, telling Zeke to accept the Turin family support. He says it seems that she's forgotten, but they are both pure-blooded awakeners. She says that it looks like there is a misunderstanding, and it's true that they receive many privileges, and just the platinum floor alone is proof of that. But they do not receive any benefits in terms of their growth. The centuries of academic and practical know-how accumulated in the academy, a personal instructor to raise their abilities, if he doesn't have these two, no matter how well off he is, he'll fall behind. That is why support families are necessary. Even Abel, the youngest ever to attain the title of White Knight and the current Black Knight, receives support from his maternal family, the Zimmons, that is, Owen's family. Although the patriarch of the Turin family has not told her the reason why, he has told her that Zeke is not receiving support from his maternal family. And she'll tell him this only once more, that he needs to accept the support. He immediately says no while shrugging his hand, leaving her confused. She asks why not, saying that receiving the family support wouldn't be a bad deal for him. He says it's not about that, and he doesn't need anything more than what he's already received as a pure-blooded awakener. It's not much, but in return for the meal, he'll give her one piece of advice she needs right now, saying that her sword has too much strength behind it, and he guesses that she's too conscious of those men. He pushes into the tree, causing all the leaves to drop. He tells her to listen well, saying that her greatest strength is the fluidity that arises from having a flexible body, telling her not to receive attacks head-on and crush her opponent's strength, but rather fluidly cast her opponent's attacks aside, and land a single delicate strike. If she can do that, she'll grow several times stronger than she is now. Hajime no Ippo type shit. He then thanks her for the meal and heads off, and we see her fist shaking, saying that the Turin family is the herald of strength, and she was simply following her family's tradition. It's not that she's being conscious of others, but she realizes that he's right, because she had been obsessed with becoming a person fitting of her family name. It is something that has been unintentionally projected into her sword as a result, and he saw through that immediately. When she was young, everyone praised her as a genius, but not one person gave her any real advice. She holds up one of the leaves to see that it's actually cut, and she starts to wonder just exactly who Zeke is. As we see Zeke walking outside, he says that all of his changed class skills have insane performance, and he wonders how he is fine even though he stayed up all night training. We see it's because he has a skill called infinite stamina, which sounds broken. He says in his past life he thought of this place as hell. But now that he is a pure-blooded awakener, this place is heaven, and money and power aren't everything. There's nothing quite like this, as we see him peacefully enjoying a stroll. 2 people then see him from a distance and call out to him, and when Zeke turns around, we see it's none other than Owen, saying that he's glad to see he's part of the special class too. Zeke says that this is the 3rd son of the Zimmons family, one of the 3 great families which we already knew of. As schemes are a Zimmons specialty, he used to bully him like the others, while maintaining his image of not having anything to do with it. Owen says that he invited him for dinner last night, but he didn't reply, asking if he received the invitation letter. Zeke wonders why he's acting so friendly, asking if it was the one that was left on his desk. Owen then asks why he didn't reply. Zeke laughs, saying that he must think he's funny, asking why he has to reply to every single thing someone asks. Someone then stomps his foot as he walks forward, saying he's being rather rude despite the young master's kindness. We see a man towering over Zeke. Zeke asks who he's meant to be, and the dude starts laughing like the main antagonist, asking how he could not know him. He says it looks like those from Cradle aren't worth much. Zeke sighs, saying that he gets that he wants to look good in front of his young master, but he needs to keep in mind who he's speaking to. He then goes for a surprise attack, which Zeke blocks, but it still causes him to get sent backward. Zeke says it seems like the high-ranking students are capable of basic aura manipulation. The dude then introduces himself as Durbin Roswell, saying they call him Durbin the Mighty, and in place of young Master Owen, he will teach him some manners. Zeke starts laughing at his nickname, saying that he's a cadet that isn't even a knight, yet he has a nickname. He finds it quite funny. Zeke then dashes off the ground, immediately closing the gap with his fist at Durbin's stomach. He calls him a joke and then hits him straight in the gut, causing him to pour blood from his nose and mouth. Durbin then gets launched flying backward. I think he just murdered this guy. Zeke then asks who's next after Durbin, telling Owen to go ahead and pick up his trash. As Owen starts to walk forward towards him, he says he sure likes to bask in his own glory, and then walks away. Zeke then calls him a third-rate villain, and he explains that Draker Academy is split into two classes. There is the normal class, wherein you are taught that if you lack talent, you must overcome it with effort, and so they follow a strict regimen from early morning till late at night. Then there is the special class, who may choose their subjects freely outside of basic studies. Even within the academy, the place where the greatest of the elites gather is the special class, which is why he had some kind of expectations. But everybody here are just alumni of the Cradle, and he wonders why it was called the special class when it's just the Cradle class. A teacher then tells them all to be quiet, saying in order to encourage the special class's freshmen, someone very special has come today. Not only was he the commander-in-chief during the Eastern Empire War 20 years ago, but he was also the hero that stopped the Empire's invasion with their resourcefulness alone. He tells them all to welcome in Chief Dean Howard Draker. Howard says it's a pleasure to meet them all, and he's also the dean of the academy. He's also a war hero, and everybody praises as a tactical genius, but the truth is that the information he leaked to the enemy for the sake of his own survival just happened to throw them into chaos, and he's simply a traitor that got lucky. Zeke sighs, saying that Rat is no hero, rather he's the main perpetrator that got him kicked out of the academy. He's lost the only remaining place where he could belong, and ended up wandering all across the Duchy of Troy, eventually getting caught by slave traders, then being sold off to the Southern Cartel, and he will make sure to repay General Lardas. The teacher says that he believes all of them have taken the dean's words to heart. Now they'll begin basic classes immediately, telling them to get their swords and head to the arena. They make their way to the indoor arena that is only for their class. Zeke says who would have thought that they have to learn the basics of dragonslaying. In his past life, simply because of the fact that he could not use aura, he spent 2 years learning what would otherwise take a person 3 months. He sighs, telling the world to go easy on him. A man then welcomes all the cadets, introducing himself as Andre Draker, saying he's going to be teaching them the dragonslaying basics. Some of the cadets start asking who he is, saying he's so young yet he's wearing the formal Draker uniform, but Zeke recognizes him, saying that despite not being a pure-blooded awakener, he graduated early from the academy, and then graduated from Valhalla as a valedictorian. He's a once-in-a-century genius that was awarded the Draker name, despite not being of the lineage. Even the special classes teachers sure are on a different level. He's also very famous for being very inflexible. Andre then tells everybody to be quiet while releasing bloodlust, saying that if they're done yapping, he's going to begin the class, telling them to draw their blades. As they start to do it, he spots something, asking Zeke what's with his comically large sword. Zeke whips it out, even doing some tricks with it, saying that as he can see, this is the sword he'll be using. Andre looks pissed, telling him to step into the arena. He asks if he's not aware of the fact that he must pick a sword that suits his body. Zeke sighs, saying he knew this was going to happen, but he wanted to make sure he stood out when drawing his sword. Zeke then taunts Andre, telling him he's sure he can beat him with the sword. Zeke says it's just going to be faster to show him his skills, but Andre is pissed. He starts to release bloodlust, but due to Zeke's class skill, his mental is unbreakable. Andre goes to draw his blade, telling him that he understands that he wishes to learn with his body. Zeke says that he's glad he bit the bait, and Andre says that if his blade so much as touches his body, he'll be exempt from not just the punishment for his rudeness. As we see him with a rose aura on his blade, which suits his nickname. He tells him that he will also be exempt from the dragon slaying basics class. Andre then tells him that he doesn't plan on using aura against the cadets, but Zeke's just happy that he's getting a class exemption, saying that he can beat Andre since he knows his weakness. But considering Abel's keeping an eye on him, it'd be dangerous for him to garner attention like he did back at the Cradle, so he'll just graze his clothes and lose. He starts to ready his blade, telling Andre that he's ready, while dashing forward. He slices towards Andre's neck in a blink. Andre deflects it, and Zeke says as expected of a Blue Knight, this isn't going to be easy. We see sparks flying as Zeke's bouncing around, but this isn't the technique he used against Raina. While Andre hasn't moved a single step, the cadets say that an official knight sure is on a whole different level, as Zeke hasn't even managed to graze his clothes for the last 30 minutes. Zeke then distances himself from Andre, whose hand is starting to shake, and he asks what the deal is with his ridiculous stamina, saying even if he is suppressing his aura, to think that he's losing to a cadet. He says the existence of pure bloods truly is unfair. Zeke says that his stamina is just as bad as always, and him suppressing his own mana isn't helping. The Draker's aura cultivation method is known for its peculiarity. You must activate your aura during training, during your daily basic task, pretty much every second of every day, maintaining it as if you were breathing. In other words, for Andre, he's basically holding his breath. Unique total swordsmanship depletes his stamina even further. As we see him send Zeke flying backward, Zeke says that losing like this doesn't feel quite right. As there's no helping it now, he has to force him to use aura, as he comes in with an overhead swing which Andre blocks. Zeke says that creating situations that can be easily handled is useless. He needs something that'll make him subconsciously use aura. In other words, an extreme situation to drive that out of him. As he flips through the air, he lands back on his feet, only to dash off the floor directly towards Andre. And Andre's surprised as he recognizes it as swift steps, saying there's no way it's this fast from a cadet, as Zeke bounces around the room like Bellamy from One Piece. Zeke then activates critical strikes right above Andre's head, while Andre's still just wondering how a cadet knows swift steps. He then turns, meeting Zeke's gaze, only to feel that he's about to be injured. We see blue aura envelop his feet as he backpedals from the attack, raising his sword up into the air. As he's preparing for a counterattack, he uses the dragon slaying arts, specifically the first chapter, Sky Slice. As aura starts to wrap and envelop his blade, he swings down towards Zeke, who smiles while putting his sword up, blocking the attack, which sends him flying away. That attack was clean. Owen and his gang are smiling, while Raina looks worried. Zeke's sword now has a giant dent in it, almost on the verge of breaking, and he says that shit really hurt, as his healing factor starts activating. He then says that now he can collapse as he lets go of his sword. Andre now, realizing what he has done, sheaths his blade and starts to walk away, telling them that this cadet no longer needs to attend class, as he's frustrated at himself for doing this to a cadet. He asks if there's anyone else who wishes to be exempt, but nobody speaks up, and he starts to release even more bloodlust, saying that he'll take that as a no. He tells them to then lift their swords, as they're going to start from the beginning. Zeke then wakes up in the hospital, saying that it was an Oscar-winning performance. While he didn't graze his clothes, he got Andre to use the aura that he said he wouldn't use. Andre got disciplined, and he obtained free time, so it's a win-win. He says that Andre's Sky Slice attack was the most basic move of the dragon slaying arts. However, because it came from a blue knight, its force was nothing short of incredible, but regardless he can still beat a blue knight, considering his limitless stamina and healing. But this isn't enough to live freely. In order not to be restricted, he needs unrestrainable power, the power that won't let him submit to anyone. As he starts to explain it, a drunkard appears beside him, saying that he must be Arthur's youngest son. Zeke's surprised, asking who the hell this hobo is. The dude tells Zeke that his eyes aren't the same as Arthur's, but Zeke just wonders who he is, as he couldn't even smell the beer, even though this dude reeks of it. And he's also calling Arthur an arrogant bastard, so he asks him who he is. The man asks him how he did that earlier, and he starts chugging even more beer, and Zeke asks what he's talking about. The dude sets his glass on the table, asking why he's feigning ignorance, saying he was inflicted with an internal wound earlier, asking how it healed instantaneously. Zeke wonders if he caught on to his healing factor, and then his mental block skill activates, and he reminds himself not to fall for it, as there's no way somebody would know of healing at the academy. So he tells the man he doesn't know what he's talking about. The man asks why he's keeping up this charade. Then immediately, the drunkard swings his hand towards Zeke's head, almost cutting it off without a sword. Zeke wonders if he is an assassin. Grabbing onto the bedsheets he throws it forwards, blocking the man's vision, who compliments him saying that this kid's got tricks. Zeke says that his instincts are screaming at him, that if he doesn't kill him, he'll be the one to die instead, as he uses swift steps, precise stab, and critical strike all at the same time. The man doesn't even dodge the attack, but simply grabs onto his blade, making Zeke realize now that he's in some serious trouble. The dude says that his ability to adapt to the situation is impressive, almost as if he was a mercenary. He starts glaring at Zeke, while Zeke wonders why the final boss appeared. The drunkard then moves the bedsheet as Zeke backpedals. He wonders who this guy is and why he called him a mercenary, suggesting maybe he knows something about his last life. The man says that it's funny to see a Draker abandon his sword, and step back, then flicks it back towards him, saying that he thinks that he is more suited to be a mercenary than a knight. Zeke now realizes that's what he meant, saying he's never felt this since his master, and he's sure of it after their brief engagement that there is an overwhelming gap between their abilities so much that if he wanted to, he could easily kill him, meaning that he's at least a red knight. The drunkard says that's a claymore from the basic supply of the cradle, asking why he's using a weapon like that, and Zeke says he might actually be stronger than a red knight. The door then cracks open as we hear Andre's voice saying that this is where he was. Zeke wonders if he's talking to him, but Andre gives him one quick glance and then calls out to the other man, who we learn is named Dexter, and he is the garden keeper. Dexter asks how he knew he was in here, calling him a leech-like bastard, and Andre says that he was in the training room earlier, making Dexter call him annoying. Andre tells Zeke that if he's done getting treated, he can return, and Zeke walks out. As he heads to the door, Dexter calls out to him, saying that if he has time, come to the Academy's Western Greenhouse and he'll teach him something useful. Awkward silence ensues as they stare at each other, and Zeke leaves, saying no thanks. Dexter then says that it seems like his personality is just as shitty as Arthur's, and then Zeke says that if Dexter has the rank to call the current patriarch Arthur out so easily, then he must be the person who only had one disciple, which was Andre, throughout his entire life, and that he is Duke Draker, the Gail Knight, one of the Black Knights who have the martial force to go against a whole kingdom alone. Why are the drunkards always powerhouses? Zeke says that he was quite the talk of the town for disappearing one day without a word, but to think he was leading a secluded life at the academy, and perhaps Andre is only here because of him. Some people say that the Duke was a person known for having a very scary tenacity, as there is a rumor that Dexter obtained Black Knight status only because he liked the color black. Dexter is showing a strong interest in him, but receiving light teaching to simply interest him is something that he doesn't want to partake in. If he's going to learn something, it should be at least his secret moves. He wants to make Dexter's interest in him be at its absolute limit. It then jumps to the actual academic side of the school, as the magic theory professor Fanon is asking the students if they know what will happen when he does this on the board. But literally every single person in this dude's class is asleep. Fanon awkwardly laughs and then starts to change it, but Zeke tells him that due to the resistance, you actually take damage. He doesn't understand the mana transfer energy law that Fanon mentioned earlier. Fanon initially is caught off guard, but starts to get hella excited, saying that's his very first time ever getting a question. He starts to explain it all to him, and he and Zeke chat back and forth while the rest take their nap. After the class ends, they wonder why they're learning about magic theory in the first place, and another student makes the same joke I just did, saying that it's nap time. Ha ha ha, Zeke says that was an easy to understand lecture, and he's definitely no ordinary professor. Fanon then tells him to wait, and when Zeke turns, he's gassed out, asking what's wrong. Fanon says it's nothing much, he just feels like he had a proper class for the first time in a while because of him, so if he ever has anything he's curious about, to come to his research lab. He's still a Delphoa Magic University scholarship alumnus, so he knows a lot. Zeke's surprised, saying he thought he wouldn't be an ordinary mage, but to think he'd be an alum from the Magic University of Delphoa, the nation where magic originated, is pretty cool. He tells Fanon he understands and then leaves, saying there's nothing bad about getting close to a mage. Mages who are good at math are usually flexible thinkers. They're better suited as colleagues than brain-dead knights. He plans to figure out later if Fanon is actually going to be really useful. He then spots something, saying that he's less patient than he thought, as it's only been a week, and Dexter is laying down in front of him. Dexter asks him if he's done, and when Zeke goes to ask what he's doing here, Dexter cuts him off, asking why he never came to the greenhouse, saying he must have understood what he meant when he said he'd teach him some useful things. Zeke tells him that he already said he wasn't interested, causing Dexter to get annoyed, asking why. Zeke says that he can tell he's incredibly talented, but he's busy with individual training right now. Dexter laughs, saying of course he can't slack off when it comes to personal training. He then teleports behind him, asking if that's what he really thought he would say. As soon as Zeke notices, he goes to turn around, but it's too late as he gets hit with the "Does this rag smell funny to you?" When he slowly opens his eyes, he says he didn't think he'd get knocked out, and a week was probably too long for Dexter. He starts to walk around, saying this must be the Western Greenhouse. Dexter asks if he's fully awake, only for Zeke to ask if he abducted him. Dexter says he prefers the term surprise adoption and that he is interested in him. Zeke says he's not even hiding it now, so he must be quite impatient. Zeke then activates swift steps, starting to run away from him, saying that it's not time yet. Dexter cuts him off, jump scaring him. Zeke backpedals to create distance to find another way out, but bumps into Dexter who is now behind him. He tries once more, but again, he can't react as Dexter's hand appears in front of his face, causing him to stop in his tracks. Zeke realizes that he's being toyed with, and that he needs something to light the fire. He asks Dexter what about him has drawn his interest, and Dexter says he already told him that he was curious about how he healed instantly. Zeke starts to grin, saying that he can't believe that was actually what bothered him. He says if he's that curious, then he should make him answer him. Dexter thinks about it for a second and then disappears. Zeke has no idea where he even went. As he starts to look around, a sword flies in from seemingly nowhere. Zeke spots it and sidesteps it, but that's not all, as he grabs onto the handle, asking Dexter what he's doing. Dexter says that he told him to force him to answer, but that's too easy, so he wants to make a bet. He'll give him the same bet, the same thing that Andre gave him. Zeke says like master like disciple. Then Dexter warns him that if he gives up on this duel, he has to tell him every single thing that he is hiding. We hear the sound of something getting absolutely destroyed as we see Dexter in the middle of his greenhouse, wondering what the hell this kid is made out of, saying it's already been 3 hours. It's not that he just has good stamina and endurance, it's that his stamina and wounds are being recovered endlessly, as Zeke stands up from some rubble. Dexter says that this kid's recovery is no joke. It looks like Zeke's actually taking some damage though, as we see him wobbling. His class skills both activate, and he says that even if they went all day, he won't be able to win the bet. He says that Might of the Dragon has always seemed too dangerous to use, but against a Black Knight, that definitely won't be a problem. He Giga locks in, channeling his past life as much as he possibly can, giving it his absolute best. Dexter starts to sweat with excitement, saying that this is how he should be, and he loves what he's seeing right now. Zeke then starts to swirl the ether around his body as he activates swift steps, shattering the ground beneath him. He comes in for a swing directly towards Dexter, who sidesteps it off to Zeke's right. Dexter says he's repeating the same attacks again, and he may be fast, but compared to the Turin girl, he's nothing. As Zeke comes in with a follow-up, Dexter says that his spite surpasses tenacity, and he loves it. He then starts to take his hand out of his pocket, saying that he should use a little bit of aura here. As we see him blocking Zeke's skill, Zeke activates the Might of the Dragon, which startles Dexter to the point where he puts too much force into blocking the attack, completely shattering the blade. He then realizes what he just did, asking what that was. Zeke takes the chance to smash the dirt, blocking Dexter's vision. Dexter then starts to look around, saying it's still going to be difficult for him to find him as well. But of course, we see Zeke come out of the smoke behind Dexter, as he is using his dragon eyes, so a little bit of smoke won't stop him. He starts to swing with a broken blade, seemingly slicing through Dexter this time, but it's none other than an afterimage. The only thing left behind was his footprint, but the speed alone creates a giant gust of wind that starts to tear up the greenhouse. Zeke wonders if this is Dexter's secret move, saying that he can't believe a simple dash caused such a strong gust. Asking if this is why he's known as the Gail Knight. Dexter then appears behind him, which startles Zeke as he turns to cut him. Of course, Dexter vanishes once more, appearing in front of him this time, saying that they'll just call this a draw as he puts aura into his fist. He hits Zeke in the stomach, causing him to spit up a lot of blood, and as his sword floats through the air, we see Zeke get sent flying across the greenhouse, that might have broken the sound barrier. The status window tells Zeke that due to excessive skill use, his fatigue has surpassed the acceptable limit, and that for his safety, his consciousness will be forcibly shut down. Zeke once more says that like master, like disciple, he loses consciousness as Dexter says something. He then wakes up to a familiar ceiling, and as he rises in bed, he realizes that he's in his room, wondering if Dexter brought him here. He then sighs, saying that he almost won, but as expected of a Black Knight. He did everything he could, and it was still useless, trying to get Dexter to put his guard down by repeating the same attack 100 times over and over, and at that decisive moment, making a gap using the Might of the Dragon, and then blocking his vision using Dragon Eyes, but it still wasn't enough. The skill Dexter used at the end was definitely his secret move, and while he got knocked unconscious for using the Draconian skills too excessively, thanks to that, he got to see Dexter's secret move with the Dragon Eye, as it was a skill that he has trained his entire body to utilize to its utmost efficiency. The secret move must have been the one that allowed Andre, who was weak in stamina, to rise to the position of Red Knight. It's a shame that he lost the opportunity to learn the skill, but it was still worthwhile. Might of the Dragon gave off the pressure that had even a Black Knight hesitate, and most small fries would definitely submit the moment they are exposed to this skill. The status window then appears above his head, saying that he has an unopened message. He wonders what this means, so he opens it, and it starts to tell him that his rank D skill Swift Step has changed into the rank C skill of High Speed Movement. His soul has developed due to the demonstration of his strong will, and along with the development of his soul, His system is now upgraded. It is also possible to activate the next function using karma. As we see, he now has the option for a minimap, an inventory, and a quest book. Zeke says they all seem pretty useful, but he's curious about what inventory is, so he buys it first. It tells him that if he selects the items he wants, they will be stored in the inventory, and when retrieving items, he can think of the name or shape of the item. The amount of space the item takes in the inventory is dependent on the weight and size, so if he wants a larger storage space, he can upgrade it using his karma points. Zeke looks over at his sword, picking it up, saying that if he can activate skills just by thinking of them, it must be the same for putting it into his inventory. He picks it up and starts saying save over and over. At this angle, our boy has no hope. RIP his hairline. His sword then goes into his inventory. Now that the claymore has disappeared, it took up 2 of the 28 boxes. He has the inventory system from Path of Exile. He then thinks about the claymore as it appears back in his hand, which surprises him. He says he thought of it as a subspace storage, but it's actually way better. A subspace artifact was expensive, but it was also hard to find an object stored within it, and he can even increase the space of this one by using points. He wonders how a skill so strong is still an option in the low rank status window. He wonders what will happen if he upgrades it, saying if the worth of these points is this high, then he can't just recklessly spend them. So he has to definitely come up with a better plan. Decker then asks if he can come in, which startles him, but he says yes. Zeke asks what he wants, and Decker tells him there's a message for him. He says that it's from the garden keeper Dexter. Zeke starts to smile, saying he guesses it wasn't a complete failure. Dexter says that if he wanted to challenge him again to come whenever, saying that he must have meant that it was a draw and they could redo the challenge, which means that the opportunity still remains for him to learn his skill. Decker says that he has one more thing to tell him. He found the blacksmith he mentioned before. Zeke gets excited, asking when the appointment is, but Decker tells him that there is a problem, as Galleon had refused the appointment. Zeke asks why he would do that. Then Decker tells him that Galleon no longer makes weapons, as we see him drinking away his sorrows. If you've watched till the end, comment, Revolution, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.